This is Karan from Whole Body Breathing. I got a question about how do you differentiate between egoic momentum and internal momentum? With whole body breathing, we are seeing that the physical patterns in our bodies and our mental patterns are one continuity. The tensions that we feel in our life, the tensions that we feel in our emotions, are also the tensions that will show up posturally for us. And those postures held over time can cause issues, right? They can cause spinal issues. They can cause issues in the way that the various skull bones relate to each other, how the body develops, how it grows, all sorts of health issues. This is the field of psychosomatics, right? Where the body and the mind are not dealt with entirely separately. Issues in the psychological process will leak into becoming issues in the physical processes of the body. In order to teach this more effectively, I've also had to reevaluate how I live my life, which I've done many times. And one of the distinctions that is becoming more clear to me is the egoic momentum that I build up and the internal momentum, like true internal momentum of what I'm actually supposed to be doing. Now, I'm going to skip ahead, way far ahead, to say that in general, you are always doing what you're supposed to be doing. That even the idea that you're doing something wrong or that, I'm doing this egoically, all of those things are illusory. You're always doing what you're supposed to be doing. There's no other option. But when it comes to, practical day-to-day living, if we're trying to improve our condition of life in some way, if we are trying to become more conscious, let's say that, okay, if we're trying to become more conscious, then one of the ways that we do that, the main way we do that, is becoming conscious of our patterns. One of the patterns that people might have is recognizing something and seeing that there's something deeper than it. So you might have heard of a situation or know of a situation where somebody works themselves into an early grave or into health problems. Their work-life balance, like whatever that means, but they say I'm working for my family, but they don't see their family. They just work, right? Or they allow their health to continue to deteriorate because they feel like they have to be at work. And work doesn't necessarily mean at the office job. It means whatever they're doing. It could even be um without a paycheck, right? It could be a mother, like the examples are given by like Gabor Mate, right? A woman in a household who is for some reason only concerned with taking care of the household and the people in the household, but not taking internal cues for what their behavior should be, what's healthy for them, what's actually good for them. So at a surface level, this behavior it'd be kind of interesting to call it egoic, right? Because you say, how could that be egoic? It's selfless. They're working for somebody else. They think but essentially a lot of our behaviors that are unhealthy are coming from a wounded place in us. They're coming from some sort of egoic trauma that could be very old. And then they subconsciously become behaviors, and we don't even realize what we're doing, what our behavior is, and how it's unhealthy for us. So, how do we make a differentiation? How have I tried to make a differentiation? So, I'm talking about my case, okay? In between what is my patterns, my egoic patterns, my thinking brain, like what is it trying to do something with my life? versus what sort of actions, what sort of behavior comes out of me when I am just naturally living, just the natural life process happening in me. And so I'll read the comment or my reply to them that in my case, the egoic momentum, it takes mental reasoning to build it up. I need to have a logical framework and a mental reasoning around the momentum that's egoic or pattern based. So, like, it's a plan that I've made. I've made that plan with some mental effort. And if I want to stick to that plan, it is going to require some discipline, or it might require a lot of discipline. So, it's a logical plan and it is certainly survival based. So, I'm thinking of what do I need and how do I achieve that. Now, this could even be subtler that a person could not be thinking of what they need and how do they achieve that, but they're thinking of just the family or thinking of they're working for the family because maybe they have a deeper pattern which is saying the same thing. What do I need and how do I achieve that? So if somebody has a fear of poverty, something like that, then they might be working intensely because they have a deeper fear of they need to have just constant money coming in. And so they're working for that deeper pattern. On a surface level, they might be thinking, consciously, they might be thinking, I'm doing this for my family. But really, on a deeper level, it's an egoic pattern. They're doing it out of a fear based response. Or, for somebody taking care of their family, they might have some abandonment issue, or they might feel like somebody didn't take care of them. So they have some obligation, things like that. So whether it's conscious or unconscious, essentially the pattern inside is thinking, what do I need and how do I achieve what I need? And then it tries to stick with that. So in trying to stick with that, it'll often meet some resistance or the other. The resistance might be internal or external. So in my case, the internal resistance would build up. I would have a planned schedule for when I'm going to do this situation and have a long-term plan actually for this is how I'm going to organize everything. This is how things are going to be set up. This is probably how much I'll make by this time, how much money I'll make by this time. I'll have this set up and this set up. And I would discipline myself through that until the internal resistance built up enough that either something internally would fail in my body or something would blow up in my life. And I'd essentially have to go back to zero momentum. It'd be like back to the drawing board again and again. And I think this happens with a lot of people trying to do self improvement, right? Um, where they have this thing like I want to improve myself. I want to whatever the thing is. It could be making more money, it could be bodybuilding, it could be relation, anywhere that they want self improvement, and then they think about it. This is where going back like the egoic mental like that mental momentum. It comes from like you think about okay, what do I want? What am I gonna do? And then you think about it, and then you have like it gives you like a moment of feeling good when your brain comes up with the plan, right? It might take a lot of effort. It might take a lot of planning. You might have to research a bunch of stuff, but then the brain gives you like that dopamine hit of like, okay, we figured it out. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be good. And often that momentum takes time to build up. It takes a lot of effort to build up. And it has the tendency, like in these self improvement things, or like, people being unable to quit certain habits or start certain habits, the tendency is that the resistance builds, the person keeps pushing until eventually something blows up, either internally or externally, and then it's a relapse back to the previous situation, previous state, or essentially back to zero momentum. Now, to caveat this, are we not supposed to push through resistance? Like, what if people don't like to go to the gym? You don't like to go to the gym for the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You don't like to be social for the first little bit, but if you push through it, don't you change your habit, you become that. This is the truth underneath what the a lot of self-help or wise people even say, that you end up changing who you are. You change from somebody who has resistance to going to the gym to essentially, let's not say you change who you are, But essentially, you have found something in the gym that you can do without so much resistance. Okay. If you can't tell, I'm not saying I'm not a fan of David Goggins or anything like that, but to intentionally find resistance and run into it doesn't necessarily seem like it's the most conducive thing to do unless that's specifically what you're trying to do, right? Unless you want to be like, you can't hurt me. I'm the toughest thing ever. I go into all the resistance and I just, then that's like a specific thing you're trying to do. But if you're trying to live a life that's more just in flow, and I'm not even saying maybe his life is in flow. David Goggins' life is in flow because his life is to keep hitting resistance. If that's the sort of life you want, that every time you wake up, you don't want to run, but you go run anyways, that's one way of living. But there's probably, I would say, people want to wake up and do that whole commercial where you wake up with a new mattress and, oh, I slept so good and I'm gonna go on a long run, and that's the life you live. What typically happens is, going into a new situation, going into the social situation, they force for a bit until they find something about it that doesn't have resistance, that their pattern fits inside of. Some people go to the gym to be social, so that replaces the not wanting to do the social activity. Some people go socialize to drink, not the healthiest way of doing it. Uh, some people just like the cold air. A lot of people smoke because they want to go stand outside. And it's an excuse to go stand outside and have lower music and just, essentially what I'm saying is, the plan to go to the gym because I want the biggest muscles and I want to have this, and I'm gonna do starting strength, and I'm gonna every day I'm gonna go this many, like half a pound up and work on that. That's the sort of plan that tends to hit resistance, and when it hits enough resistance internally or externally, the momentum goes to zero. They just stop going to the gym. Whereas if, as a part of that plan, the natural momentum, the deeper momentum underneath starts to come in, that's when naturally you can continue the action and become just a person who goes to the gym or works out, does runs, or is social. Okay. And so you can't you can't egoically force yourself into that deeper momentum. If you get lucky, and I think this is what happens a lot of times, because people say it worked for me, right? You just have to force it, you just have to do it, and it works for a percentage of people, and it doesn't work for a percentage of people. But for that same percentage of people, that one, he just forced himself to play piano. He or she forced themselves to play piano, and they were able to force themselves to play piano, but not go to the gym. But that other person was able to force themselves to learn a different language, but not socialize. This is the conscious, the egoic mind rationalizing its own lack of control. If you're supposed to be somebody who goes to the gym, you're going to end up going to the gym. If you're not someone who's going to go to the gym, it doesn't matter how many times you egoically sit down and make your plan to go to the gym. It's going to crash down to zero momentum every time. Maybe you should run. Maybe you should do calisthenics at home. Maybe you should, I don't know, do something else. But enough people keep crashing against the same plan. That's probably the worst part of the self-improvement, is that we have a plan for what we're going to do. I'm going to do this and this and this, and then we crash against it, and then the next time we have a wave of motivation or feel good, we build the same plan usually with some minor alterations, and we crash against that same plan. You're going to do what you're meant to do anyways. And some people feed their ego with what they're meant to do and say, I did this. No, you ended up going into a nice flow with something. If you weren't supposed to go into that flow, you wouldn't have gone into it. You had very little input. So how do you find the flow? How do you find the momentum in life that is coming from your own internal flow? Whether that includes going to the gym, whether it includes runs, walks, A lot of socializing, not socializing. There's no right way to live. But where's the natural flow? Okay. And this is important for the whole body breathing and our concept of everything that we're doing, because if this natural flow is blocked up, it builds up tension inside of you. That tension could manifest as all sorts of physical problems, including the tightness that we say contributes to poor posture and poor form. Okay. Or like, when people go to a chiropractic session or do a whole body breathing session, osteopathic session, all these things, they feel relaxed after. Right? You do meditation, you open up, you feel relaxed. And then at the first stage, they go into life and they see the short pattern of like, I saw this person, I got pissed off again. I came into this situation, I got tight again. So those are the short-term patterns, and we start to unwind those. But then oftentimes it happens like, wait, I didn't do anything in particular. How come I'm still building up this resistance or this tightness? Nothing seemed to have gone really wrong in my day, but maybe the day overall is not correct. It's a life that is being lived from a deeper ego. We it's hard to admit. I'll admit on behalf of myself that a lot of times we end up in a life that we thought we built, but we didn't build it. We just sort of fell ass backwards into our childhood fears, what society's expectations were us. Like there were just these grooves that we kind of ended up in and got tightened, and we're living in it because, I mean, logically, survival based and everything is just the right thing to do. And then some people really try to break out of that by like, I'm gonna just leave everything and explore the world. I tried that. Okay, I've done it. But I did it from a little bit of an egoic place, right? Because I sat down and I thought, if I just leave everything and I go to the forest or something, I thought about it. That's the issue. Okay. So egoic momentum versus the real momentum. The egoic momentum is something you think through it, you plan through it, and it's going to be based on survival, it's going to be based on logic, it's going to be based on like what you think you need to do in order to survive. There's going to be mental effort involved, discipline involved. You're thinking like, what do I need to do to achieve something, and you're trying to stick with that, and it's going to meet resistance, internal or external. And usually when the resistance builds up enough, something happens inside of you, health wise, mental wise, or externally, and then it essentially that'll blow up until your momentum goes to zero, and you have to start again, right? Whatever it is you're doing. So an important part of this is also that the momentum that you do build, if you're trying to do this, it often goes to zero quickly. As soon as you stop pushing, the progress seems to stop. All the progress has to be with your effort. Okay. I rather than give a specific example, I'd like you just to think of anything maybe in your life or an example that you can, just anything you can conjure up where you're working in a certain direction, and if you don't work at that, if you don't keep pushing and working at it, the day that you just lay down in bed and not do anything, or the day that you take a vacation, the momentum is gonna stop entirely, or it's gonna backslide. Essentially, the only thing keeping that thing going was your continuous putting effort into it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and draining yourself into it, because energy, I'm going to talk about energy, right? You're putting your energy into this thing that's not moving unless you push it. Okay. This is yourself we're talking about. It's not this other thing. It's like your own activity that you're doing, and you only continue doing it through an effort of yourself. And it has external manifestations, right? So if you're working on something and you're working on it, you're working on it, you're working on it, a project that you're working on, and then the week that you get sick because you burned yourself out, that project is just dead in the water. It doesn't move anywhere. In fact, you've lost a lot of progress because the time has gone past and the progress or the project hasn't moved ahead. So the opposite to that, there's something a Swamiji said, which I liked, which was that there's a million ways to do things wrong, and there's only one way to like really do them right. So like, there's so many possible examples of how you could build this egoic momentum in different areas of life, how we could build it in different areas of our life. Whereas the proper I'm gonna call it proper internal momentum, like that flow of life that naturally animates you and makes you do things. There's only one way to do it, and that's just to do it. It just automatically will do things. So the internal momentum is instinctual. It doesn't need to make any accommodations for personal needs or survival. When you're doing these things, you're not consciously or even subconsciously, you're not thinking about your personal needs or your survival. Does that not mean that they can't be related to your no, like they will naturally, the things that are part of your natural personal needs or survival, they'll either be naturally taken care of or you'll take care of them without any resistance to how you're doing it. Um, we'll get to how, because this requires trust, right? So when it comes to the internal momentum and trusting that internal feeling of like you do know what to do, you do know what to do, not logically, not intellectually. Because a lot of the times, if you ask somebody what do they need to do, well, I got to get my my bachelor's degree, and then I'll get this promotion, so I just got to do the, or I just have to get this person this certificate, and then maybe they'll behave differently or something like that sort of thinking. But it's like, what do you need to do right now? This is where we get to the core, like thinking and whole body breathing. Right now, your heart is beating, but you're not doing anything about it logically. Your liver is functioning. You have trillions of cells in your body. They're just going on without your interference. And when you go to sleep at night, you check out. You entirely check out from the world. And yet the world keeps spinning. Everything keeps going. But then we wake up and we're like, oh, I gotta do all this stuff. But like for a few blissful hours at night, you're like, you checked out and the world kept turning without you. In fact, your life and the life of all the people around you that you're trying to take care of, everyone continued living, even though you were completely out of here, not here at all. So that little bit of trust that you have at night, you don't look at your lungs and your liver and everything and say, "Hey, I'm gonna go to sleep. You guys better keep working." You have like an implicit trust. It's the deepest trust actually that you know it's gonna keep going, right? You don't wake up every minute to go check on your loved ones and see. You have this implicit trust that whatever's keeping everything going is gonna keep it going. Now to take that trust and say, I'm going to sit here and I don't know how I'm going to take care of my family, that requires a deeper level of trust, and that doesn't get built all at once. It can, right? A lot of gurus and people say, take the leap, right? Just take the leap. It's jumping into a well. This Terence McKenna was saying that it's like you jump into the abyss and you find that it's a feather bed. Um, Even Sadhguru was saying that it's like the this is the same jump that's been spoken about everywhere. But am I going too esoteric? Am I going too esoteric in terms of we're just trying to differentiate right now between what's egoic and what is naturally your life process and what you should be doing in life, right? So the internal momentum that comes naturally, it doesn't come so much from thinking or logic. It doesn't come from your personal needs or your needs for survival. It's something that inherently you begin acting of itself so. It's like another like Taoism, right? The adjustments that you need to make are made moment to moment. So if you need to feed your kid, you make that adjustment. If you need to, help somebody out of a ditch, you do that. If you need to take care of yourself, you need to feed yourself, you do that. It's like these adjustments just happen moment to moment. So right now, before I did this, I'm doing this video, I put down an electrical engineering book. I was reading an electrical engineering book. Why am I reading? It has nothing to do with what my income is or because I picked up an electrical engineering book, so I'm reading it. And then all of a sudden, I felt the impulse to put it down and check out how like the whole body breathing communities are going. As soon as I did that, I started responding to messages. And I don't know how long the activity will last, but the activity started with a synchronicity. This is one thing that's really important for the internal momentum. It'll often come with synchronicities. People find out that as soon as they let go, the universe starts filling in gaps, right? I've had the type of things that you could write a book about, that like money, like insane amounts of wealth, because that's the thing people mostly get impressed with, right? But like as soon as I started letting go, literally just out of thin air, money in big amounts. And well, there's no point in talking about it. It's either you do it. I guess there's a point in talking about it so that people get excited enough to begin trusting, right? Um, but there's synchronicities that people understand happen when they start letting go and start trusting the process. So that's what happens, right? So I put down the engineering book, and um, one of the first messages that I checked, somebody sent me a message that had a certain line of inquiry. They're asking about something like pretty specific. And then on the other platform, on Facebook, I saw that somebody had sent me a message saying, "Hey, check this out." And what they had sent me was perfectly like exact material that I could now send to the first person and say, "Yeah, you're right. Like what you're talking about fits. It makes a lot of sense." They're talking about whole body breathing and the eyes, so correcting myopia and how the eyesight and the posture and everything, like whole body breathing's trying to fix the entire mind and the body at once. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different people doing different research, and we're just trying to integrate all of it. So if you're interested in that stuff, like join the Discord community, join the chats, like we welcome you. But that first message that I saw, I was like, how to respond to this? And then the second message that I saw was the perfect video response. And so I just said, yeah, you're perfectly right. Also, here's a video response. And then I went back to the first person. There was a method I learned in a yoga class, in a Kriya yoga class, 5 years ago, for unblocking your nostrils. So if your nostrils get blocked up and like you're only able to breathe through one, there was a method that I learned in a class, and I could not for the life of me find it again. I could not find it again. But it turns out this person on Facebook had sent me, not, it wasn't that class. It was somebody else. I don't know if they took that class or if this is just a method that's well known, but they sent me that video. And while I was sitting there reading my electrical engineering book, something was just in me feeling like you gotta go open Facebook and open the Google chat, which is how people in the whole body breathing sphere message me and said, you gotta open those two things and look at them. And so synchronicity one, synchronicity two, the third thing I did was answered a question that somebody had sent me about a week ago. How do you differentiate between egoic momentum and internal momentum? I answered that question, and the answer to that question is now, within a couple minutes, becoming this video. What's the next thing I'm going to do today? I don't know. Generally do not know. I know as soon as I start thinking about what I'm going to do, it feels, it doesn't feel good. I'll back up with it. I said there's another spiritual teacher by the name of Muji. He said it begins to feel that way, where it's like you have to plan your day. It's like, why? Just let it be. It'll go. Like the right thing will happen. Okay. So that internal momentum is instinctual. You're not really thinking about survival, not thinking about anything in particular, really. Just wherever it's a technique, right? We have to learn not to listen to our mind. So this sort of thing happens gradually. If you listen to your mind and you don't know how to get out of that, this is not going to be necessarily available to you right away. You have to build up slowly to it. That how do I learn to not listen to my mind? And that'll happen by building discipline. It's all a paradox, right? So if you don't know how not to listen to your mind, then you have to force yourself to go to the gym and socialize, because if you're not doing those things when you don't want to do them, you have not built discipline. So first you need to build the discipline over your mind to not listen to it, because it's going to say, I don't want to do those things, and you do them anyways. And then once you've built the discipline to not listen to your mind, you can actually listen to it less and less. And you need less and less discipline, actually. The discipline actually becomes just purely not listening to it. Rather than I'm disciplining my mind to go to the gym, I'm disciplining my mind to go socialize. It just becomes I'm disciplining my mind so that my mind is disciplined and it doesn't bug me. And when your mind's not bugging you, there's less resistance in you. The actions externally become smoother, become synchronistic, right? And internally, it's important for whole body breathing because we are looking for this flow of energy, this flow of breath When you breathe in, you're going to feel the resistance in you. Why do you have resistance? You're going to let old resistance out. And importantly, during your day, this is really what this video is about. During your day, you're not going to let new resistance in. Slowly, slowly, you're going to see the patterns that you built around yourself, the walls that you built around yourself, the situations that you got yourself in, that you slowly start to let go of them as things will be taken care of. Okay. So, importantly, the momentum from this type of action, it does not need as much effort. And it's also self-sustaining. So with whole body breathing, for example, right? A lot of building up whole body breathing, it's been about 10 years. It's called the Great Work Forum and like mewing and everything, it's all involved. Um, but a lot of the actions that I took in setting this stuff up were internal momentum based. I wasn't actually thinking logically. I just had this internal something inside me said like set up the forum, like buy the domain name, do this and do this, reach out to this person. But the things that just came internally, a lot of it was that. And so all of the actions which were done that way, they continue rolling, like their momentum. I took like a month break. I needed to, like I burned myself out intensely. And the momentum from the things that I was consciously, like my ego was trying to build, the momentum from those things went to zero as soon as I stopped. Like as soon as I took my foot off the pedal, the momentum stopped. But the work that I had put in that wasn't from my own planning, that was just me thinking this will be fun or this will be not thinking. Like when it comes up internally, it might feel fun, it might feel helpful, it might feel something, but in general what it just feels like is this internal excitement inside of you of I just feel like doing the thing, and you automatically just you start doing it, you start speaking it, you start saying it. Um so coming back to that is really the whole game of whole body breathing and the spiritual game too. With enough clarity, because the egoic mind or the egoic way of doing things, like the trauma based way of doing things, that's like if you're living in this body, you're living in this mind. It's like living in one that is murky. It's like murky water. It's a mirror, or rather a glass that's not clear. You can't see through it clearly. And so all of the actions, all the energy that you put into it comes through in like a distorted way. It's like less than perfect. In the grand scheme of things, it is all perfect. But if we are trying to get into a better state in our body and our mind, then it comes with slowly clearing these obstructions out of the glass, out of the prism that our body mind is. Prism, Prism, prism. Although, you can make that comparison to the prison word, but I was going to say I won't do that, but I just did it. Clearing the obstructions or the impurities out of that. And that starts off slow by just not listening to the mind. Starts off with actually disciplining yourself, hilariously enough, right? That you're not listening to the mind, and then that becomes more abstract disciplines, such as when I see this person, I'm not going to allow myself to react very externally. I'll just observe the reaction that I have. When I think about going to the gym, I'm not going to have this reaction. I'm going to observe the reaction that comes up. In observing the reactions enough, we begin to see the underlying patterns, samskaras. This is getting deep level. That what are the deep underlying patterns that are causing the way that I exist right now? My main motivations, my main drivers, the reason that I behave the way that I behave. I think these are the deep levels that we need to get more and more people to for the good of the planet and for the good of people's mental health and for the good of people's physical health, right? And correcting this, issue of collapse, right? Within whole body breathing, we see in around the past 10,000 years or so, human physical structures have collapsed. It's most evident in the jaws and the face that they're undergrown. But just in the body in general, people are living in a collapsed physical state. And there's also been a simultaneous mental collapse and also an explosion in how we manifest externally, but like, you know, by multiple parameters, the society is collapsing in many ways too. And so to not view those as three separate issues or as many separate issues as you want to put it, but to view it entirely as one issue. That there are deeper patterns inside of us, and the entire work is first look at the surface level patterns. I react this way, I behave this way, da, 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 and then go down into deeper level patterns. And what we want to get to is a point where our behavior is not coming from reactions and egoic and trauma places, but rather it's coming from that just natural flow of energy. The same thing that powers your heart, powers your liver, powers the sun, powers the wind, powers like the bumblebees and stuff. That same unified source, that one knows how to do things properly. It knows how to run the body properly, grow the bones properly, breathe properly. So we've built a lot of layers on top of that. We built a bunch of cobwebs of egoic abstraction on top of that. And so we want to clear the cobwebs. And as you do so, you probably find your breathing gets better, your breathing gets deeper, your posture automatically undergoes natural internal changes. Okay. Of course, there's many other topics that are coming up, but I'll leave it here around 37 minutes. You can leave comments, or if any of this interested you, I do welcome you to join the communities. We have a lot of people talking about this stuff that know about it on a very deep level. Thank you for listening.